Yeah, hi kids. Well, I'm still in Vegas. Red Panther here. Zenviking Athletic Club presents James Duschen. I'm in Vegas and came from Vegas to Henderson to see my old buddy Jim Duschen. And you know, we thought about meeting at a strip club, but our wives would get mad at us. So we meet.
And I'm underage anyway.
And he's underage. Couldn't get in, so we're in Barnes & Noble bookstore. This is where Jim usually comes to get his books on existentialism and other important philosophical movements. At any rate, Jim and I go back to actually 1964.
Yep, briefly there for an evening.
I was at the state meet with a guy named Dick Taylor, who you guys know as Tugboat Taylor. Dick Taylor wrestled Don Buzzard in the finals of the state meet. And after the meet, or the state meet, Dick found this guy, Jim Duschen, and he showed us around Waterloo, and that's the first time I met Jim. And Jim grew up there and went to which high school?
I went to East High School.
And back then, kids, Waterloo East was the powerhouse.
Well, both East and West were both powerhouses during that era.
Hey, don't contradict me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
The late 50s, early mid-60s, both East and West were top teams in the state, year in and year out. It was a great place to grow up.
And back then they had the state championships at the...
They had them at Northern Iowa, which at that time was Iowa State Teachers College. In fact, it changed names twice, from Iowa State Teachers College to State College of Iowa to the University of Northern Iowa, which it has been for quite some time. Quite a history there as well at UNI, and they held the state tournament at Old Fieldhouse.
Hold it one second. I got to back up a little bit. You also had some connections there as a kid, because I'm thinking your uncle.
My uncle
wrestled
Jack,
there.
Jack Smith. He was a state champion out of East High School, same high school that I competed for. Jack went on, wrestled there at Northern Iowa, UNI, and went on to a very successful coaching career in Sigourney, Iowa.
So your uncle was a wrestling coach and a wrestler for UNI.
Yeah, and that was my first introductions to the sport as a youngster in elementary school, when I went to the state tournament and had the opportunity to watch my uncle win the state championship. And I thought, hey, that's pretty neat. That's what I want to do.
I'm sorry, how old were you?
I was in 3rd grade at that time.
Wow, must have been a big deal.
Yeah, at the time I thought, boy, this is great.
Your Uncle Jack. And who's the coach at UNI back then?
The coach at UNI during that era was a guy by the name of Bill Cole. Bill Cole was a legend during that time period. He never lost a collegiate match himself while he was competing for Northern Iowa.
Wow, and he was the coach?
He was the head coach.
Amazing. I've heard stories about Bill Cole. And his, I'm jumping around, but his son now.
His son is the head coach at Cornell University in New York, and doing a fantastic job. In fact, this coming year, Cornell is expected to put in a strong bid to win the NCAA championship.
Well, they better not. Because, kids, we know who we're rooting for. All right, I'm getting off the subject. So anyway, grew up in Waterloo there, had a tremendous experience watching your uncle And then you wrestled for East?
I wrestled for East. The last year they held a state tournament at the old field house on the UNI campus. It was my senior year, which I qualified for the state tournament. So I wrestled in the last state tournament that was held there. The following year they moved the state tournament to what was known as the Hippodrome, the Waterloo Auditorium, McElroy Auditorium. And that's where I first met you, John, when Dick Taylor introduced you to me. And I was working for the Illinois Central Railroad at the time.
And he had a big Impala, kids.
Yeah, I had a nice car and good job.
I'm going to back up again. Dick Taylor and you were bat boys.
Yes, we were.
When you were kids.
We were bat boys. Well, Dick was the bat boy for the Clinton Sea Sox, and I was the bat boy for the Waterloo Hawks. In fact, at that time, those were the two top teams in the league, Midwest League. Waterloo ended up beating Clinton for the league championship.
Well, kids, that's when I first met Jim, and then later on, I had the privilege and opportunity to wrestle for Iowa State, and that's where I pick up the trail again. Jim was also at Iowa State. Didn't go right into college. Had a little bit of an adventure also in, was it San Diego?
Well, Bay Area. I was out
the
there
Bay Area,
in
sorry.
Vallejo, California, and doing a little wrestling on Mare Island Naval Base there.
Because our old buddy was in the Navy. Who was he?
Mike Chapman, who's a lifelong friend of mine. I still keep in close touch with Mike. He's had an outstanding career in a number of different areas, primarily as a journalist. He's written numerous books. He's been a managing editor of a few different newspapers. And Mike and I go way back.
And Mike was a wrestler.
Mike did some wrestling himself, yes he did.
And as a young man, you went out to wrestle for the Navy without being in the Navy.
Yeah, it's kind of, I remember at the time they said, just kind of keep it under the hat there.
And it was freestyle. Was it?
Most of it, well, we did a little bit of everything. Primarily freestyle and some collegiate. We wrestled some college teams out there as well as other bases, military bases.
So sounds like a great experience, but eventually you come back to Waterloo.
Yes, I was out there a little over 2 months. Came back to Waterloo, kind of bounced around doing a few different jobs. Ended up getting a job at the end of the following summer on the Illinois Central Railroad.
And what were you, Jim?
I was a switchman.
Okay, some of us out there know what a switchman is. You're responsible to throw the switch.
Well, yeah, so to speak. Switching tracks to move cars down different tracks there in the yards, as well as passing signals, uncoupling cars, tying handbrakes on cars. A few of the main duties that the job entailed.
Kids, this is part one, and just stay with us. We're going to be right back.